Yes, a warm welcome to Xenopia hack session with Giulia Tomasello from Alma, Futura. We had the honor to have her in residency and also in Gaudi labs for almost 3 weeks, 4 weeks. 3 weeks, yeah. And she's been traveling between Lucerne and Zurich, the two notorious biohacker spaces from Switzerland, and could experiment and research more on her newest project, Xenopia, on pregnancy tests. Mm-hmm. So the hack session today is also questioning a lot about female health, health system, how the body is articulated in a biomedical sphere and in 21st century. And she found out quite some interesting fact. For example, abortion has been legalized in Switzerland by the year 2002. And in Germany, for example, it has never been legalized. They just made a law around it, so it's not being criminalized as a female. And especially currently with what's happening with the American juristics and how those movements are also swapping over to Europe, I think it's quite a pressing and urgent issue to talk about. And I'm super happy to see many male people here, or many non-uterus owning people here. So we also started to divide between uterus owning and non-uterus owning people. But I think it's both, right? It needs to, yes. So the world is situated. Yeah. Yes. Thank
you. Okay. Thank you everyone for being here. It's actually already the second time I'm in this side talking about this project, so it's I'm honored. And today I'm very happy to invite you to the first session of the hacking session of Xenopia. It's the first one because we are planning already a second one in Turin in 3 weeks, but yeah, this one is coming with really a lot of kind of new research and understanding what is happening in the field of pregnancy tests, of monitoring hormones, and especially also what is happening in Switzerland, which is to be also local. As Maya said, I'm doing this residency, so before I will show you what I've been doing at Gaudi Lab, and then what is happening here. When I'm gonna speak in plural, so I will always say we, because actually this research is done by Alma Futura, which is a collective and a studio based in Italy between Rome and Val Susa. So it's me as a designer, interaction designer, and educator based in Rome, and my colleague Isabel Farina as a medical anthropologist. She's based in Val Susa in the north, like up Turin. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction of where we are coming from in order to introduce you to Xenopia. With Alma Futura, we started 6 years ago to work on how technologies, and especially low technology, can be influential to change in female intimate care. So, for example, we started by developing a sensor that one day can be worn in the underwear and that can monitor vaginal fluids, in particular pH and vaginal microbiome. Why? Because those two are very good indicators if we want to understand or predict early vaginal infections. This project lasted 3-4 years. This is actually a picture with the prototype of the underwears, which you also have it here. And we were supported every time by European funding or UK funding, because at the time we had also 2 scientists that were based at the Cambridge University. And here I have like a second iteration of the sensor that is embroidered. So later you can come over. It's embroidered with silver thread and gold thread and coated to become a pH sensor. It means that when fluids goes on both of the electrodes, it gives a signal to then send it to a phone and tell you, hey, if you have symptoms like itchiness, bad smells in your fluids, or funky colors, maybe is because something is happening, which is either a candida if your pH is very acidic, or a bacterial vaginosis if it becomes very alkaline. And the fact is that from this research, we decided to leave the high-tech part in aside. Why? Because the reality is that even if this Android one day will be in the market, probably will not be accessible for everyone. Like, the reality is that no one that is really able to do wearable tech in a very high level is doing it, like Motorola, Samsung, or Apple, or Microsoft. Nobody. And nobody's also going in the healthcare. Let's question why. So we felt that even though this could really revolutionize how we can measure fluids that we constantly lose, but we never really measure, because by chance there are measurements in thousands of measurements in saliva, in sweat, in tears, but nothing on vaginal fluids. Still, first, the market will not be ready, but also people. Like the people with uterus or with vaginal fluids will not be also ready yet to understand that probably a technology, as maybe they are measuring every day their steps, can also give them information on their health. So what we did was, in the last 2 years, to move from the high-tech to a low-tech. We went back in what in the 70s women's groups they were doing, and they were actually meeting, usually in a circle like this, and they were talking about their experiences. This was a process called self-consciousness raising, and was really done to share the fact that experiences that most of the time are considered taboo in our health probably are not only individual, but it happens to many of us. And that was a powerful tool if you think that back in the time was impossible to talk about topics like menstruation, orgasms, masturbation, pregnancy, which we can consider even now. It's so really open and honest, like a conversation we can see even today, right? Like, it's difficult to talk about certain topics, even in a more like a different space like this one. So what we started to do, and that book that Maya is reading is actually from the 80s. It's called How to Stay Away from the Gynecologist's Office. Mm-hmm. We started to really take back an instrument, a tool that it is, and it's still now very, very challenging, and it's a tool that everyone, most of the people with the uterus that use it hates it, and it's called speculum. It's the one that we use in gynecological office, that the gynecologists use to like open up the vaginal canal and see the cervix. The cervix is actually this. Mm-hmm. So those are actually 3D models that Amy Bravewater developed as a real size of the organs of a reproductive body. So this is the size of a clitoris, if you ever wonder how big is a clitoris. Mm-hmm. Here. And how it will build up is that we will have a clitoris, here's the vaginal canal, the cervix, uterus, fallopian tubes, which actually are mobile, don't know if you ever heard, and the ovaries. So the cervix is an organ which actually people with uterus are very lucky to see, because people without uterus, they cannot see any internal organs. We can. And this organ is actually very useful to know it because we can understand better our health. For example, it's moving during the cycle, so it's very high when it's ovulation happening, because if a spermatozoa has to really travel to go to the ovary, it has to really get tired. This is the point. So it has to really, really go high and then pass, and maybe something is happening. While, for example, when we are closer to menstruation, this gets lower because all the endometrium that is it didn't get fertilized, the uterus or the ovaries, then the endometrium is breaking and then release the menstrual blood. And it has also an opening that it changes from unopened to closed. So it's very important, and the only way, unfortunately, to see it is by using this tool, which, yes, we hate it because it's really coming from, it carries an history of violence, misogyny, racism, and it was developed and invented by what is called the father of gynecologists, of modern gynecology, which luckily is changing this narrative. But it was called James Marion Sims. And what he was doing, he was buying slaves in the field, that they were maybe having other problems like fistula or other issues, and then he was doing operation on them without anesthesia, even though anesthesia existed, and those women were mainly black women, and they were not using anesthesia because they were believing that they didn't suffer from any pain. And the crazy part is that he wrote about 3 slaves, the one that he cared maybe more, which they are Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. Anarcha had more than 34 operations until she died. So imagine what does it mean to be opened up, to be discovered, and the all-female body is actually called by also men. So the fallopian tubes, Bartolini and Skene glands, which are the glands for lubrication, not by chance they are called by some men. And that's why also we hate it when we go to the gynecologist, because yes, it's really coming with violence. There are many collectives that so far has been working on open gynecology and that are also friends of this community. So we have Paula Pin and Clau Kinky that they started the Guinea-Punk, a full process on reclaiming also the body parts of reproductive bodies. So for example, now we don't call the Bertolini glands anymore Bertolini, but we call them Anarcha glands, and the Skena glands are called Lucy and Betsy. So I invite you all to embrace also this new word. And what we started to do is to do self-gynecological exploration. So in a circle, we will start by opening up legs, show where is what, and then to invite people that wanted to then also self-explore themselves. Of course, these practices are coming with care, and especially this is our methodology. So we developed a participatory methodology to co-design all this innovation, because we believe this is the only way to design innovation, even though big companies are not doing this, of course. And maybe, yes, it's a much longer and slow process, but this is how we have been doing so far. Like we started with the first workshop back in 2019 in Rio de Janeiro, then it was in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Switzerland we came to Basel, in Italy, Germany. So the point is to gather more and more experiences and opinion from many people to understand where we should go in talking about female intimate care and how technology actually is playing a role or not. So this is like an approach with high-tech / low-tech in making the smart underwear. But at the same time, we've been also approaching low technology, and for example, how to work with biomaterials. I don't know if you ever played with, but you can really try to think that you are in a kitchen lab, so in a kitchen, and play with materials like gelatin, starch, to create other type of materials that they maybe look plastic, so we can call them bioplastics or biotextiles. In this case, we were developing sanitary pad made of agar-agar, starch, and glycerin, and with an ink that actually is changing with the pH change. It's an ink coming from the clitoria flower or also the red cabbage, which are all inks that they are sensitive to pH. And the point is what if one day I want to see my pH? So maybe I make a pad, and the stable color of a clitoria flower is actually a pH alkaline as 6 or 7, and then I put on top, or I wear it, vaginal fluids, which actually was healthy because it's in the range of 4.5. I can see the color changing, and then I can throw it in the food waste. So a very easy way and DIY at home that you can make to make your own test. But before we started actually by domesticating biotechnology, which is also much more closer to the open science lab that we have here, Gaudi Lab, where actually you are embracing science, microbiology at home, and also as part of your knowledge, even though maybe you didn't study microbiology or biology or science. So in this case, it was during my studies at Central St. Martin's when I started to grow vaginal microbiome at home. And mainly I was also working to see if bacteria and textile were growing together. So in the pattern there were also pieces of different textiles, fibers, hair. And what I was mainly interested was to grow fluids also. So for example, on the right you have how lactobacillus grow, on the left how candida is growing, and you can recognize them by making it, of course. So it's a practice of making and caring and love that you do, that you recognize it visually, like to recognize the type of bacteria, but the candida especially you can recognize by the smell. So here we really go back in also how our senses can be used from a low technology, but in a microbiology point of view. Also, these two petri are made with a medium. Yes.
Something about that? Do you also know about any traditions where taste is being used for identifying these kind of irregularities? Has this been in previous generations maybe more common?
I don't know stories like this. Maybe.
Like you just take a soap and you smell it.
No, I mean like with the tongue or like yeah.
By the way, the
Like-
smell.
Like regularly just tasting it and maybe see whether there's some changes over time. Maybe keeping like a diary on taste.
On taste.
Well, Candida would taste.
Candida will taste.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, exactly. You can do
And
that.
also-
It's a crazy one.
And also trichomonasis, which is another vaginal infection which has usually a very fishy smell. It tends to go there. So, but I will say that trichomonasis. But I will say that the smell probably is the strongest one. And the medium used to grow this bacteria, so the orangey part that you can see below, the agar-agar part, it's coming from a protocol that we developed last year at Angar, which is another research institution like this one, and together with the biologist biohacker Gaia Leandra. And it's called Biophilia Protocol. So you can find it actually in the Open Science Lab as a protocol. You can download it and you can replicate it, because the point is that this medium was designed to grow only vaginal microbiome on it, and we try to develop it with ingredients that you can buy at the supermarket, so easily accessible. But arriving now, we are now working on a project called Xenopia. Why Xenopia? Because this frog is called Xenopus leavis, and it's the frog that from the 1930 to 1950 was used as a pregnancy test. What they were doing, they were injecting the pee of a person that they believed was pregnant in the frog, and if the frog the day after was going to produce eggs, then the person was pregnant. So you can imagine the market of those frogs that existed, but also the violence like against this non-human entity that we perpetuated, like, and that we continue in many other ways. But this one, it sounds a bit absurd, I will say. And we actually, the first pregnancy test arrived only from the 60s, 80s. So the first digital pregnancy test actually came in the 80s. Before, either there was nothing, or there were frogs, or there were other more recent tradition in peeing on certain plants. So of course, if we trace back, we can go into to more indigenous practice. But what we focus for now is to make free the frog. That's why it's Xenopia. So with this project, we have some funding. We received some funding on Open Science and Citizen Science European funds, claiming we are doing a project about abortion in Italy. So we were super surprised that we got it. And that's why we are now doing, I'm now here as a resident in residency, but we're doing workshop because again, we are developing through the practice of care this technology. And what we want to develop is actually a test at home, so a DIY test to monitor hormone HCG in a different way than it's doing now. Because now we have 3 ways to monitor HCG. So before it used to be the frog. Now is either this paper strip pregnancy test or the digital one that is telling us the weeks, or we have blood test or ecography. But the problem what it is happening that ecography and blood test, they are traced by the government because you have to go to an hospital to do it. While the clear blue of the digital test, clear blue, because actually clear blue has the monopoly and is Swiss, is actually not so affordable because it goes from 15 francs onwards. And in Italy it's the same. It costs around 15 euros. So how can we make accessible a tool for everyone to monitor this HCG at home? And why we should monitor? There are a few different reasons. Why? First one, if you're pregnant, you can monitor the level of hormone that is growing, because at some point it will stop at the 5th month, so it will not continue to grow. Second, because if you want to do a different choice in pregnancy, aka abortion, you need to understand which weeks you're pregnant in order to understand if you can do it legally or not in your country. If you can do it, for example, with the pharmacological abortion, that are the pills of misoprostol and mifeprostone. So it's either a combination of the two or only 8 pills of misoprostol, which, by the way, is a pill that was discovered by indigenous Brazilian women, because it's used actually for ulcera, like for pain contraction. So these pills is giving you contraction, and if you take them so many and with a rhythm in time, you can expel a possible embryo or whatever is there. So, but it's very important to understand which weeks you're pregnant or not. And if you do an abortion, it's very important again to double test if everything went through. So it's a tool that we need. Plus, recent studies shows that actually measuring the HCG hormone can also give you a scale, like let's say an indicator if maybe a tumor or cancer is coming. Because even people without a uterus, if they have a high level of HCG, probably can be a testicular tumor or something else. Those are recent studies. So I'm going very quick in the history of pregnancy tests, but imagine at the beginning was also like a ribbon that was dipped in the pee of the lady, and if it was changing color, then maybe it was pregnant. So everything really comes with a big narrative. And this is actually the first pregnancy test by Clear Blue, which also was done like what we used to do recently with, for example, the COVID test, where we are placing the pee on top of some antibodies changing, and then we have a color result. And this is the history of this amazing company, which changed so much. And now I don't know why, but they do even a foldable pregnancy test. And they say for you to have your own privacy, when then you take it, to throw it away, because you can fold it and throw it. When we talk about the hormone, in a person with uterus, there are many hormones all the time. So it's not only the HCG hormone that comes when we are pregnant, but actually during our cycles, which usually start from menstruation until post-ovulation, there are many hormones that every time play a role, which also play a role in our body, in our humor, and in being who we are. And so there are levels of progesterone and estrogens that go up and down. And what we can say from this slide is that mainly the HCG, when there is a fertilized egg, what is happening is that the HCG hormone stimulates the corpus luteum to start to produce more progesterone for creating a very thicker endometrium in the uterus. So to really welcome this new creature that is coming. So the HCG, and in this case also progesterone, are really high together to tell to the uterus, hey, let's get together to start something new and to support pregnancy. And in here you can see what I told you before, that the level of HCG, it's really getting higher and higher, and then it will stop around the 12 weeks. So from the 3rd to the 5th month, it will stop. So what I started to do in the residency here in Switzerland, these 3 weeks, I started to gather all the scraping, yes, which is the most also invasive in this case. But by chance, also when you do an abortion in hospital, you also don't know actually what they're doing to you until it happens. So And those, for example, are the tools that back in the 70s, like in, for example, a women's circle, they were using for gynecological self-exploration, but then also to practice abortion at home. And this is what now in US is back, because of course it became, with the Roe v. Wade, it became illegal in many countries, so, but people still have to do abortion. And they have to be able to choose. So today, I would like to have a specific approach in this biohacking session, which I promise I'm going to stop to talk very soon. So the approach that I would like to have is taken from a few references. The first one is Mary Magic, artist, biohacker, friend also from this community, which worked back in 2015 on developing a protocol to synthesize hormones at home, in this case estrogen, for people that wants to, because they're going through a transition and they cannot access to estrogen in the hospital or anywhere else, so they can produce it at home. In this case, Mary developed a protocol where you can synthesize hormones from the pee, from urine, and also the protocols are online available. It's like done with cigarette butts and like a bottle that is cut it and like put it upside down. And what is very interesting from this project is not only the accessibility that she created and the whole new paradigm that yes, we can make hormones at home, actually from our urine, but also the narrative and the language. Mary in this case works a lot with videos and documentaries, so you could see also like the way that she portrayed the whole topic. So I would love that everyone, we will embrace this transfeminist way to do open science together. And here there is a book which unfortunately is just in Italian, but is the translation of her thesis that she did in 2015 of the open estrogen. Another approach which I would like to suggest is from the Xenopia group, but in this case from Paola Pin, also part of this community, which developed tools in a workshopology meaning point of view, which is also a term that Mary used to develop tools through workshop and DIY tools, for example, to make your own speculum, to make your own microscope, which of course everything is also coming from all of us, and that everything is spread also in the wiki Hackteria that you can find. And the point is that you can really access things that most of the time are inside a lab or inside like privatized spaces like hospitals at home or for the need of the collective and the community. While this one is an example coming from the market now. This is a project from Inne, which is a startup that actually started in 2018 in Berlin to produce this printer that reads the LH value in the saliva. So it's the hormone that actually is coming, the luteal hormone, when you are ovulating. So this costs 120 euros, this printer. And you will have to buy with a subscription monthly or trimestral to buy those little strips that actually are just in a case, plastic case, to lick them and then put it inside this printer. You have to imagine that, like when we talk about fertility, there is a lot, right? Because the point, like from this capitalistic society, is to make babies, to make more people for the war or for whatever. So this is going actually not so well at the beginning, because I've been following the newsletter to really understand. And just today, they released this at 50 euros, so we are going to buy, because we want to open it and to see what is happening there. But the reality is that it's still very little, the community is accessing it, and it's not very well yet discovered or used. But what we like a lot from this project is the fact that it's using the saliva. So it's another medium instead of peeing to actually detect hormones in this case. So for today, for tonight, I would love that we will approach in few ways this topic. One, by hacking electronics. So I brought you a lot of pregnancy tests, especially digital pregnancy tests, super expensive one, that we can open them and just tear them apart to understand what is happening inside. We did it already. Actually, even Clear Blue in their website, they state that yeah, people are opening to see how they can steal our patent, but we are much more clever. Because of course, as soon you are removing the batteries here, everything like get restarted, like it reset it. And what is made this of is actually, so this is from their website, it's there is like an absorbent tip where you're like actually putting your pee, which then goes up. Behind here there is another peel that is blocking the pee to not go to the electronics. Then we have a plastic case holding these two paper strips. These two paper strips, they have the antibodies of the HCG hormone. That one, it will color to tell you you are pregnant. The second one will tell you the quantity, 1, 2 weeks, 3, 4, 4, 6 weeks. And then below this case, we have these different LEDs, which most of them are red LEDs, and then a photodiode to read actually the color that is bouncing probably from the paper back to the sensor and to tell us a possible value. Behind we have the screen that is telling us in English, which is also like something that we have to mention. Clear Blue speaks only in English to tell you you're pregnant, you're non-pregnant, or the weeks. And then we have batteries. So there are many versions of this, the Clear Blue, which has been developed throughout years. So to unbuild this one, for example, here we have only 3 LEDs, and then the sensor, the microcontroller, and the battery. This all repository, I found them in different websites, and then I will show you all the research, so you can also go through and see how they open it up, what they talk about. But to just be very honest, we are talking about peeing on a computer that then we throw it in the bin. Because this is the reality, right? Like we are really peeing on a microchip, super like clever, like a screen, batteries, which then we dip in the bin without even thinking about. Why we don't think about? Because probably in that moment, the people that need it, they don't want to think about too much, and it's just a necessity, and it's just maybe for people that can access it, it's just fast enough to tell them what they want to know. But the reality is that if now in 2024 we cannot talk about electronic waste, but still in schools we have to teach about sustainable materials, this doesn't make sense, right? And the fact that they have the monopoly of Clear Blue and they're still producing this, there is an issue, there is a problem. So many people try to hack them, not really in a way to make something better or different, but mainly to see how it works. And what I saw is that mainly were people without uterus playing with it, and which is still very interesting, because of course a person without uterus, meaning a person that maybe will not get pregnant, to get this tool, it's something that maybe also they feel is a taboo, right? Like, and maybe you can tell me, but of course it comes with a lot of stereotypes, taboos, like why maybe if I will never get pregnant, I want to take this. Even maybe me now that I don't want to get pregnant, why I should look at this, right? So it's very interesting that all this research is done by different person approaching it. In here, for example, we have 5 LED pin. So every time it's changing, but let's say that the basics is the same. And then you can have either 1 or 2 photodiodes to read the LED. So, for example, this one, it's this guy is called IoT Too Much, so Internet of Things Too Much, and he hacked this pregnancy test with a Bluetooth chip to actually tweet it. So it will tweet you, pregnant, yeah, but also not pregnant, yeah. So, which is quite positive, because I was really waiting, what will you tell me if I'm not pregnant? That is not bad, but no. And he has also the whole repository online on Hackster or Instructables on how he did it. The reason why I still don't get it too much, but for example, this other person played Doom on it. So he hacked it to do this game in the screen. The interesting part of him, or them, or they, is that on X, there is the full documentation of how he did it, why, which is much more interesting than the tweeting one. And there are people replying, because of course he placed it on, this person placed it on X. And so it's very interesting to see how people reply, but look, we just need it, so of course we are gonna pee on it and then throw it. That doesn't matter, it matters if I'm pregnant or not, or the weeks. Or other people were saying, yeah, like playing Doom, it's super cool, why I didn't think about it before. So maybe they saw a point in having a screen that we don't throw it away, but we can use it again. But again, nobody came up yet with this tool at home and to hack it for it. Then, an approach that I took when I was with Urs and Miranda in Gaudi Lab in Lucerne was to see it from a fluid point of view. Because actually, before the digital test, everything was on a paper test. And this is actually the only one that we found in Germany. It's, the brand is called Viola. That if you pee on it, it gives you 2 levels of hormones. So if you are pregnant, and like if you are 1 or 2 or 3, 4 weeks in a paper, the only one. And so what I started to do is like, okay, how does it work, a paper strip? A paper strip works with a lateral assay. So there is like antibodies that carry like, that are there placed, and then the fluid, more it's going towards these antibodies, the more it's changing the color to give us this biomarker and telling us, yes, there are antibodies or there are not. Well, there is hormones or there is not. And it's really just like, I will say, a chemical process that you do on this paper. So what I was doing with in Gaudi Labs was to play with the open colorimeter from Rodeo to actually play with different fluids color changing. In this case, I played with nitrates, that we can find them in running water. In theory, we shouldn't find them in Daphne water, otherwise the Daphne will die. And by chance, they were also in my pee, because in this case, I had some pee infection, maybe, and there was some nitrates. So I was playing to like understand what it could be a color range to make one day a new paper strip, where one day there will not be the nitrates, but there will be different HCG hormone level that it can give me, and that can maybe be something that I can do at home, and then I can just like put it in the paper bin. And it was very interesting. I don't think I understand too much. I learned a lot to pipette. I learned that yes, there is a lot in reading a number, or let's say reading like what this colorimeter gives you by the reflection of the color in this fluid. What makes me think is, do we actually care about a number? Do we want to see a digital number to understand like a symptoms or a bodily feeling, like a bodily symptom, or do I want to see a color change, or maybe do I want to have different type of senses that get like closer to me to tell me if I'm pregnant or not, or if I have this hormone or not? And also why we should measure things. This is a study that a scientist that I just met last weekend in Napoli during a conference about self-managed abortion told me that she is like really running a full research on why we measure pregnancy. Like why we have to give a 1 or 2 weeks, or 2-3 weeks, why we have to give the size of a lemon to a creature growing, like why? And this, of course, is also coming from our point of view from controlling reproductive bodies. Because we have to give an agency to something, we have to give like numbers, and so this is the way, for example, that clear blue digital test gives you when like in the screen if you're pregnant or not of the weeks, but then it doesn't tell me more. So is this something enough, or is a number actually more important than specific colors or a specific smell maybe? And in this Twitter, they were, for example, talking, so like a scientist was saying, yeah, actually the brain detection of a color rather than a device detection of a color is much more accurate, but it changed very little. So does it really make a difference to have like a digital rather than an analog? Let's talk about. And yeah, those are the recent findings in actually measuring HCG also for tumor. So we can now open up for questions, open up mainly for like making, but yeah, this is our like theory in why we should develop a DIY test to monitor HCG hormone. So I hope I inspired you. If some people wants to stay also to make, we will now see how many we are, and if we can split in those tables, or if to stay more in the open science lab and the electronics area. But what I brought is a lot of pregnancy tests that you're more than welcome to open, destroy, laser them, whatever you want to do, to see whatever, anything. I have paper strips. I prepared already Petri dishes where we can grow vaginal microbiome or fluids. Like what I would like to do together is to bring our creativity in a speculative manner even. Like we don't have to make something that works, but what it could be, the monitoring tool at home that can allow us to monitor our hormones. Like what if not only pee but saliva or other part of our bodies can give us this output or these results. So everything is allowed, everything is good. There will not be a good or bad, but what I would love is it's a critical part, because we never question sometimes tools that are given to us to use, while I think we should start to really question them and to be critical in order to get a change. And I think this is the best place and community to do it.